Chat. It'll take a couple seconds to delete some of this junk that I don't need. Index here. All right, so this index.css, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and paste my entire CSS file into here. Copy the main CSS file, the whole thing, and drop it into index.css. Okay, now that means I don't need app.css anymore. So I'm going to take that away. And I'll just trim this one line from there. And this logo as well. Those will result in errors anyways. Okay, so we have our HTML, our CSS. So we have our CSS in here. We've trimmed this up. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on getting this HTML out. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on multiple pages to start. Okay, I think that's the easiest thing to focus on without getting bogged down in some of the details. So we're going to look at how to implement React Router essentially on a virtually empty app with almost just HTML. Okay, so over here, what I'm going to do is we have our, I'm going to copy this link for Font Awesome first. I'm going to go put that in the public index HTML over here. Clean this up as well. So much junk in here. I just put my Font Awesome link inside the index.html. So this is the index.html, obviously, that gets used to get compiled, and we get a new outputted version in the when we do a build. Okay, I'm sure you have figured that out by now. And we're going to come back here, and we have our header up here, and then we have our main. And very interesting stuff here, right? Location, object, computed match, object. That's very interesting. You might have to delete that. I just exported it, and so this is what it ended up with. I'm very curious to know what ends up happening if I don't delete it, but we'll find out. So we have our header, which is just going to be our header, and that's in. Let's go over to app. So let's do it in, I think we needed 4 components, right? We needed app, header, cart, and item, right? So let's build those 4 components, and let's just put HTML inside each of those components just to get something. Okay, so the first one we'll do is our header component, really easy. Okay, capital H, header, creating a new file here under source. Okay, in our header component, we're going to import React from React. I'm not going to worry right now about whether or not this is a stateless component or a stateful component. Let's just get a component out there, but let's make it a class anyways. Even if it's stateless, that's fine. Okay, a class still works. And this way it's a little bit more flexible. Whichever one you choose to do is fine. Okay, I'm just doing this because I don't want to have to change it later. And we'll do a render function. And this will return some stuff, some JSX, and it will return this JSX that I copied over here. The header JSX. Oof, that looks pretty terrible. We have our A. I'm just fixing this up. Okay. Jeez, what a mess. That prettier did not work very well. Okay, there we go. So we have our header. Okay. We have our header. Okay, just the HTML, the JSX. We'll change all this class stuff to class name. So we're going to change it from class to, except for this one. I don't want to change that one, but that's fine. I'll change that singular one and then I'll change it back. Class name, replace all of them except for this, and then I'll fix this one. We updated everything, all the instances of class to class name. Okay. And we'll export this default. And over here, we'll import that header H from header. And actually, we'll fix this up. This will likely end up having state. So we'll say class app extends component. And we've got the render function here as well. So we'll return and we're going to start with one of these because I know we're going to have a couple pieces in here for now. We're just going to say, actually, let's take a quick look at our HTML and we'll see that this header, okay, so header is inside of root. And over here, they both have a header, and they have a main. Okay, so just taking a quick look at that HTML to kind of figure out where I'm at, I think I'm going to need these fragments here because we're going to end up with this header, and then we're going to end up with like a main tag with some stuff in it. So we end up with 2 tags, and obviously we can't return 2 tags, so we're going to put it inside a fragment. Okay. If we go back and we see that, we see header here, and then we see main, and we're an index. If we go back to cart, we see the same thing. We see header here, and then we see main. The only difference is cart has an aside cart, and main has a UL for items. So that's the only difference there. Okay. Then let's throw down some items, I guess. Okay. So I had said that I was going to just copy and paste all this stuff in here just to get things going. So that's what I'll do. It's going to be pretty gross, but that's fine. So we'll come over here to our index, and we end up inside main. We have this big class items. We could just copy and paste that if we wanted to. Okay, pretty ugly, but that's fine. Okay, actually, if we look at our app now, it's actually looks like the app. Where is my Canvas start? So if you're looking for a strategy on how to approach building an application, this is a perfectly fine strategy, right? It's pretty common that you'll have some sort of layout or HTML first. Okay, and at the same time, we can also, we'll have to put a card out here soon. The other thing that we can also do while we're doing this is going to grab the HTML for the cart, okay, which is everything inside this aside over here. And that also goes inside of main. So we have our giant cart, and then we have our big list of buttons, or a big list of items here. Now, we can go ahead and add our React Router DOM right here, and essentially tell it to pick between either this chunk of JSX or this chunk of JSX. That's essentially what React Router does. It's kind of like a switch statement that, based on the route, the path, it's going to pick the correct HTML or JSX to render. Okay, this is taking a while. So while that's happening, we're going to add React Router DOM. Okay, so React Router DOM, the first place we need to add this is in index.js. So we need to import, and this is the only time we need to import this, browser router from React Router DOM. Okay, we're importing browser router from React Router DOM. And we're going to wrap that around app, because we essentially, think about it this way, we essentially want to use React Router inside app, so we're going to wrap the whole thing in browser router. It will give us the functionality that we need. So we're going to wrap app in browser router. Step one. Step two, we come over here to our app page and we include the pieces that we want. Now, if we look over here, and here's our local host. So we already have our page. Where's our cart? Oh, I didn't save it. Okay, so I save that, I refresh, and we'll see our cart and our items, right? So obviously this is not something that we want. So we're going to include React Router on this page, and we're going to look at the pieces that we need, right? Because we essentially have multiple pieces. We have, so on import, we can bring in link, we can bring in switch, and we can bring in route. We can also bring in browser router, right? But we already brought that in, so we don't need to bring that in again. Which one of these three do we need? Or which ones of these three do we need? And so that's something that we have to figure out. Well, switch and route go together because we do switch on the outside, like a switch statement, and then we have multiple routes inside, right? So those ones go together. So if we import one, we're probably importing both. But then we also have link, and link allows us to create a link tag that will drive the browser to a different URL, right? So, and we have that on both pages. We have it on our cart, okay, with this keep shopping link, and then we have it in our header with this tag up here. We also have it up here. I didn't mention this, but there's also a link in the header on the H1. Okay, I just didn't mention that. It's not a big deal. If you didn't add it, great. If you added it, great. If you didn't add it, that's fine. Okay, in a project, I would ask you, hey, make sure that you add this H1 as a link. So we're actually going to need all three because we do need that link on each of those pages. So we're going to import all three of these. Okay, you may not need all three of them sometimes, so it depends on what you're trying to build and what pieces of functionality from React Router DOM that you need from React Router DOM. Oops. Now, to use this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap my two pieces of HTML or JSX that I want to be able to switch between inside route tags. So inside this aside, this cart, I'm going to wrap it inside a route tag. Route path equals /cart. So the path equals /cart, again, to remind you, is essentially like, if we think of route like an if statement, we're essentially saying if the URL equals cart. That's what we're asking. Okay, but actually, without this keyword exact, okay, we're actually asking if the URL starts with cart. Okay, starts with cart. So it would match anything else that includes /cart. So it could be if the URL had /Cartesian, it would match. Okay, now that's probably not what we want. We probably want only the triple equals, right? The exact match. So we want to say if the route exactly matches the URL cart. If the URL matches exactly /cart. Okay, and that's slash based on some domain. So localhost, port 3000, johnneisel.com, right? What goes here, what goes in advance of this, doesn't matter as long as it's the top level domain. Okay, as long as it ends with the TLD. What this won't match is other things like something.com, another URL, another subfolder /cart. So it wouldn't match this. Okay, this is not /cart anymore in terms of we're thinking about URLs. This is /another folder /cart. That's what this is. Okay, when we talk about /cart, when we talk about /anything, this is considered, this slash here is considered the root of the site. And the root of the site is always coming off of this piece right here. Right after that .com or .org or .whatever, that's where the root of the site starts. Now, there are some exceptions to that, but when you get into that area of exceptions, that'll probably come up in a couple of years. You should know things better at that point. Okay, so you'll be able to understand this. This is not a 100% absolute all the time. This is 100% absolutely all the time in this course. Okay.
Hey, John, I just had a kind of dumb question.
Yeah.
What does the aside tag do in HTML?
Aside?
Yeah.
It's just it's a div with a name.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a semantic name, just like the header tag over here.
Yeah, it's just.
It doesn't do anything. It's just a div. It just has a name. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're going to say render. Okay, and we're going to use. You're probably safe to use render the whole time. You don't necessarily have to, but we're going to use render. Okay. And we're going to say, actually, we don't actually have to. I figured that out last class, right? We can just wrap it in a route. So we could take this, actually I will take this and move it all the way to the bottom here. And we'll indent it. I remember I tested that out at the end of last class and I found it. We didn't need to. So here we go. Here is our first piece of our if statement. Route, cart. Now we have our second half, the items. Route, path equals slash. So just the root. So essentially this is like the index.html. Okay, but it may not be always index.html. Usually is, but it may not always be. And we're going to take this other half. And we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom. Now we're going to drop it in right here. We're going to take all this junk that's inside, all these items, and we're going to indent them. Save that. And now we're going to come back to our website, and we can see already that this has started to take effect. Localhost 3000 works. It's got no cart. And this URL actually goes to cart, even though it's not properly working yet. And cart works. Okay. Now this shouldn't work because it's missing switch, but this is a deprecated feature. So switch is something new that they've added. Before you didn't need to add this keyword switch. So they're still letting both of them work. So with switch and without switch, but they also state in their documentation that you should be wrapping all your routes inside switch, because at some point in time, the old way is going to stop working. Okay. So there we go. We've implemented our router, where essentially we have a big if statement or a switch statement around two different possible matches. /cart, which will output this junk, or /nothing, which will output this junk. Okay. And you can see we are at /nothing. And we get this. Okay. Now this link works, but it doesn't work correctly. And what I mean by that is we are a single page JavaScript application. What you don't want your single page JavaScript application to do is reload or perform an additional actual load of any additional pages, right? A load means that little thing at the top starts spinning because it reached out and grabbed another page from the server. You don't want that. But these A tags, by default, that's what they do. So watch what happens when I click this cart right here. Watch what happens to the little React logo at the top, okay? You can see it started loading. And so this is actually a new page. And that's not what we're trying to do with single page apps. What we're trying to do is stop that from happening, destroy DOM, and insert new DOM, right? Excuse me. So that A tag in the header, in this header, okay, that is no good. Actually, so I don't need link up here. I need link over in the header. Just link. Because this is where I want to use the link. Where these A tags are, I want these to be link tags. Link. And I'm replacing them instead of href. And so I'm going to do the same thing over here. Where it says A tag, I'm changing it to link. Instead of href, I'm changing it to 2. Same thing down here. So I imported link from React Router DOM. So it will take care of making those A tags and making them work in the way that works as a single page app. So now if I come back here and I go back to my home page and I refresh that, see, it's still an A tag. If we were to look at the HTML, it's still an A tag. What happens now to this little React logo, you won't see it spin anymore. Okay, now that's been fixed. Oh, I gotta fix that keep shopping one. Where's that keep shopping one? Oh, that's in the cart, which means I'll probably need one over there too. But okay. So there we have it. Our React Router DOM multi-page, I guess single page application. The process is going to be very similar every single time. You may have more routes, maybe not. I don't think you will. You will. In the final project, you'll have 3. Not a big deal. Okay. It's the same process. You'll just have one more group bunch of stuff. Now our process from here is essentially doing the same thing that we did before, which is it's just an app with some components and we're passing around some state. Everything else surrounding this stuff is React Router DOM is done. It hasn't made, it will not impact anything else. Okay. So probably a good time to head on over to our exercise, grab our endpoint, get some real items out on this page. So we're going to start by fixing up this big chunk of JSX with these items on the page. And all we're going to do is we're going to go get our real items, put them in state, and load them from state. So we're going to start by adding some state to this app. And that's going to be the items. And items are going to start as an empty array. And all we're going to do is on component did mount, right? If you remember assignment 1, this may not always be what you want. Component did mount is great when you want to populate things on page load, but this may not be always where you want to be performing your API calls. Most of you, like 99% of you, figured this out, okay? So just something to keep in mind. Component did mount. And it's over here that we're going to perform the fetch because this is where, because I want this to happen on page load. And my simple update here is just going to be, and I know this is fine because I've done this before, but normally you would console log this data, you would look at it, and you would say what pieces of this data or what part of this data, or can I take all this data, right? You would evaluate your data coming in and decide what you need. Okay, now I already know what I need because I've done this 5 times, and this is just a refactor of something that we've already done. So actually, we've already done this, most of this stuff, including this component did mount with these pieces. So all I'm going to say is data. We need to get this data, this chunk of movies, right? If we console, let's console log it for fun. For fun, we should do things the right way. We'll console log this data. We'll go check out this app. We'll inspect console. And we get that array, and we get our pieces of data, okay? So we should be putting this array of items into this state item. And so we're going to say this dot state, set state, and we're going to pass an object and say items is now equal to data. There we go. Excuse me. So now what we should go about doing is fixing our items here. So now they are no longer loading from these hard-coded values, but instead now they are being loaded from this state. So we're going to switch it from JSX into JavaScript, and we're going to say this dot state dot items dot map. We're going to take that one item, and we are going to put down this. Okay, and essentially this will automatically return a little bit of JSX. And we'll drop this piece in here. And now it's just a matter of going through here and replacing those little bits that we want. But to save us a little bit of time, we already know something, and that is that we should probably make a component out of this, right? So instead of spending the time of going through here and inserting item, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into here and say new file, item.js, and we'll make this a component. And this will definitely 100% be a functional component. It has no state of its own. And I know that because we've already been down this road. Okay, we've already done this. Export defaults, item. And all we're going to do here is return a little bit of stuff. And that little bit of stuff is this one li right here. And then it's just a matter of receiving this prop and being passed this prop. So the way it's going to look is item, item, item. Okay. And that will replace all of this stuff in here, but not that UL. Okay. Now, obviously, I need to import that. And I feel like something's missing here, but it's not complaining. The other thing I'll need to do is I'll need to include a key on here. .id. Okay, so that way it gets rid of that warning. Then inside of item, I have access to it via props or whatever I call this here. Okay, so I can now, one, fix this word class everywhere. Class name, good. So update the word class and then start replacing these things. So instead of this image source, I actually don't know what it is because I didn't bother to look at it. It'll be, yeah.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
You know when you're passing the props and you put items, item equals item?
Yeah.
Is that preferred to pass the whole object? Because like I know on the assignment in a component, I passed like the individual props that way. Would you prefer we pass the whole item and then deal with it on the component?
I don't know what the way is.
Yeah.
To me, in my mind, I think this is probably the best way. It's the least amount of effort. Now
managed in the component as well that way, right? Instead of
the only problem with this is something. Okay, so something we didn't cover is something called prop types, and that is something that you can put on your component that checks the values of your props. So you can say, right, because the idea here is components are individual pieces and they could be technically reused. Technically, we don't in our case, but in a bigger app, imagine a component being a really awesome button or something that you want to use in a bunch of different spots. You can put this little validation on your component that says, I accept this type, these props, and here are the types that they have to be. So for example, the movie URL prop or the image URL prop, you could put a little thing on here that says it must be a string and it must conform to this type of like URL stringy type thing. Like it has to have HTTP or something like that in it. So you can put validations on these things. Now, if you pass in your prop as an object like I'm doing, those wouldn't trigger. So actually talking through this it's probably a better idea to pass in individual props. If you want to see something cool though.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if you want to see something interesting.
Always.
You can do this. And then on the other end, so this is kind of, okay. Then on the other end, we'll just, so we're going to console log props. We just did ... item inside of this. We didn't give any keyword on the other side. Okay. So over here, this is what we got for props. So you get an object back on the other side, a props object. So now I have props.id, props.name, props.image. So it's as though I did this.
Yeah, right.
Right? It's like I took each individual property and I individually put it in there or declared it in there, but I'm not. Instead, I'm just doing this, and that will do that explosion thing, okay? Where it separates that entire item into each of its individual properties. And as it gets sent through here, it gets received into here. This is called a REST parameter, essentially. Okay, so that's really interesting. You'll see some people do that. I think this is actually the preferred method, because it's very clean on this side, but we still get very specific props on this side.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, and actually, for fun, let's do that. So you have some sort of point of reference for someone doing that in one of your videos. Okay, and that's this video here. Okay, so we have our item, which is being decomposed. Okay. And I think we have item dot, sorry, this is props.image. I wish I was looking at these.
Image URL.
What is it?
Image URL.
URL, okay. Props.name. Props.price. And props.description. That works, sure. Description, good. Everything looks good. Okay, so there we go. We moved our original HTML and we converted it into a component inside a route. Okay, obviously we got a few more things left to do. I mean, this add to cart isn't working. Okay, but again, we'll fix that up. Now, same thing for your cart. Okay, your cart has cart items. 1 cart item, 2 cart items, 3 cart items. Okay, so we are going to be doing, instead of a individual static, so this is static, I would call this static. Static means not moving, not changing, right? The opposite of static is dynamic. It's changing. We don't know what it's going to be. It could be anything. So we don't want this static data. We want dynamic data. Dynamic meaning it comes from our program. It's determined from our program based on user action. Okay, so we're going to be replacing this static HTML with some dynamic stuff. Okay, so we're going to have a cart item. Wait, did I need a cart and a cart item? Does anyone refresh my? What do we need? A cart and a cart item. Okay, so we need a cart. So a cart will replace this whole thing. And then inside of there, we're going to manage cart items. Okay. So forget about this cart item for now. We're going to replace this whole chunk, this whole aside, okay, with a cart. And all we're going to do is we're going to grab this thing, this whole aside, and it's going to be put into cart. So new file, cart.js. React. And turn, and we're just going to paste this stuff in here that we pulled up. Here's our cart. There we go. Okay. Export. Alt. All right. So we'll fix up this indentation a little bit. Looks good. Hey, looks all right. Now, import this cart over here. And now we have our cart and it's ready to roll. Okay. So look how much we've cleaned this up, right? It is it was way cleaner than it was before. Actually, I'm just going to indent this a little bit so it looks a little bit better. Okay. Way cleaner than it was before. Way easier to understand. And that's what we're going for. Okay. And we have our cart. Now our cart's a lot more difficult to understand. That's okay. Let's fix this up too. Okay. Everything should still be working properly. Cart. Oh.
React, sir.
Yeah,
React.
there we go. Can't resolve React. Oh, right. That's why it wasn't telling me. There we go. Okay, there we go. There we go. Okay, so our cart's working. Our keep shopping is not working because we needed to fix that right here, right? So we need to import our keep shopping is still an A tag, so it's not working properly. So we need to import link to fix that from React Router DOM. And then I can just change this A tag to a link. Okay, in addition, I'm gonna have to change all these classes as well, but I'm not gonna do that just yet because I'm gonna be cleaning a lot of this stuff up as I go ahead, but I will clean this one up. Class name and class name. Okay, so our keep shopping icon is still working. So that's this icon over here. So that should be
href to true.
Oh yeah, thank you. There we go. That's why it's not working. And now it should work fine. There we go. No more reloading. Looks a lot cleaner now. Okay. Now these are going to be individual cart items. Okay. Now we don't have cart items yet, so one more time. Our last time, cart item.js, okay. And we're gonna take this out. And I know that our cart item is cart item. It is a stateless component. Okay. And we're just going to return some stuff. That's this. Okay. Now, for now, we'll just leave one item in there. So we have a sample. Okay. We'll take this out. And there we go. Way cleaner over here too. We'll change these class names to class name. Cart item, do the same thing over here. Okay. We're exporting that. We need to import our cart item. And that should do it. Everything should keep working. One item in our carts this time. Perfect. All right. Last but not least, we need to hook all this stuff up. Okay. It's all working. Our items are real items. Our cart is not real yet. Okay. This item is not real. This total is not real yet. Those are just numbers, hard-coded numbers. So we're going to have to fix that. I think the first thing we should do is fix this add to cart button and start adding items into our cart. Okay, so back in here, we have these items, and each of these items have an add to cart button on them. Okay, down here, item, add to cart. So what do we want to happen when we click on it? Well, we want to add this item to our cart. Now our cart is over here. Okay, so essentially item has some connection to cart and cart has some connection to cart. Now, again, if we were to look at that diagram, that diagram that I have over here, okay, where cart and item, okay, they're similar, they share something, which means the state cannot be in either of them for those cart items. Instead, it has to be at a common parent. Okay, that's how I determine that. So the common parent is here in app. So this is where we're going to keep track of our cart items, which also means that if this is where our cart items state exists, this is also where the function to add an item to cart exists, right? So this is the function to add the item to the cart. All we're going to do is we can console log that item, or we know what we're doing here. Right? This is not something new. So the idea here is we're going to receive one of these items, and all we're going to do is we're going to clone it and push it onto the cart item state. Because we don't want to add this specific item, because as we saw before, if we add that item multiple times, when we remove that item, we're going to end up removing all of them. We want to add a clone of that item. So we're going to say, and remember, we're going to be pushing it or adding it to the previous list of items, which means we need previous state. So this dot set state, previous state. And all we're going to do, wrap this in some weird syntax over here. We're going to say, that should do it. Cart items is equal to whatever cart items was before dot, 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 pre-state dot cart items, okay, whatever it was before, and another element, and that additional element is dot, 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 item, a clone of this item. So that will push this new cart item onto state. And now, okay, so we have this function that adds cart items onto our state, but we're never using it. So we need to obviously use it. We need to attach it to that button that's way down here inside item. So in order to attach it down there, we have to pass it down there. So we're gonna have to say add item to cart. This dot add item to cart. So we get that in props on item. And then down here in item, we're going to attach it to this button. On click, props, add item to cart. And we need to pass in the specific item. Props dot, ooh, and see, this is where things don't work out so well. Because I didn't pass down the item, in props, I pass down specific individual properties. I no longer have this item object. Now that sucks, right? To me, I am not a fan of that. And so I'm gonna, right? And any opinions on this? You see what I'm saying?
What if we should put just props?
The problem is, no, the problem is props is all the props, including this function itself, right? Props dot add item to cart. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, and that's where this breaks down a little bit. And then you could say, well, then I'm also going to pass an item. But if you're doing this already, then there's no point in doing this because you don't need them. So I think it's a dependent situation, like depending on your needs. I think it's dependent on your needs. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to have to fix these. So this is now props.item. So everything that was props before is now props.item, except for this one. And now we have an item that we can pass back to this thing. Now, again, there's other ways. There are other ways. Don't get me wrong. There's always other ways, right? I could have provided it with 4 pieces of information: image URL, name, price, description, right? I could have, it doesn't even need an image URL. A cart item doesn't need an image. It needs a price and it needs a name. That's all it needs. Okay, I could have done that. But that opens up a new problem that I would have had to deal with later that I don't want to talk about. Okay, but with programming, you're going to be put in positions where you are not always in control of all the code. And you may have to do things that you don't want to do. You may be saying to yourself, oh my God, I wish whoever wrote this code had done it in this way. Because now I'm put in this situation where I have to do all sorts of extra work just to add this item to the cart. Okay, not everything. In fact, many times in programming, it's not ideal. We have to do things in a less than ideal way because we're working with old code. We're working with code that we didn't write. We're working under pressure to do things fast instead of right? So there's a lot of other things that impact how we decide to write our program. It's not always perfect. So going back to the question of, is this the right way? the answer to that is the right way sometimes is any way that works, unfortunately. So there we have props, add to cart, and we're passing in our item. So now, if we got this working properly, an error here. Where is that? On our app.
There, down.
Looks fine to me.
It's on cart,
It's on cart.
line 20.
Ah, yes, thank you. There we go. So now, well, we got a little error there on index. We'll fix that after. We add to cart. We've got no errors. Let's check out to see if we're actually adding to our cart. App. We have cart items. Excellent. Great. So now we have cart items. So I'm just checking our state. Okay. So you see Browser Router adds a lot of extra stuff in here, a lot of extra junk. Okay. So it makes it a little bit harder to dig through it, but you can click on app. App is my app component. I can see its props. It has no props. And I can see its state. The 8 mice that we're showing plus the 4 that I added to my cart. Let's add another one. Click. And now we have 5. Okay, so proof that that works. Now I have cart items. Awesome. Now I can pass these cart items down to my cart. So I can pass my entire array of cart items down to my cart. So I'm going to pass that down. Okay. I'm also going to pass that into header because it needs some of the data to be able to fulfill some of that information. Now, I don't need to pass all the information if I don't want to. I can just pass the amounts. So number of items, which is this.state.cartItems.length. Right? So this is the number of items. That's this bottom one here. And if I wanted to, I can also figure out this price and pass in the total price of the stuff that's in my cart. Okay. And that could be a function. Right? That could be a function, or I can just say start_state.cartItems.reduce, and this will generate a number. Okay, we saw reduce already. Reduce takes 2 pieces, an accumulator and an item, cart item, call it CI. And all it is ACC plus CI, comma 0. This is the number here is what we start accumulator at. And this whole thing will go through the entire array and add CI.price together. And so we'll get a price for all these things. So we're passing that into header. Okay, and again, I know this is a little bit quick and I'm using reduce pretty fast. I've used it already. Go back and check that video on Friday if you want to see a more detailed description on how to use reduce. Okay, so now I have 2 props in header, number of items and total price. So if I went to header where it says price here, I can say this.props.total price.toFixed, because I want to make sure that it's coming at us two numbers. If you don't do that, you might see that some of the prices add up to weird numbers because of how JavaScript adds these numbers together. So honestly, you do want to do 2 fixed. And then over here, we have number this dot props dot number of items. And that should do it. 0 items, $0. Good. So that's working. Okay. And we're also going to pass that data down into the cart. We have our cart item. Actually, we're going to say inside of our cart, we're receiving these props. So we're going to say this dot props dot cart items dot map. I'm going to go over those cart items. Cart item. And we're going to put that cart item in here. And we're going to pass that entire cart item through to the cart item component. And then inside the cart item component, we can just display these pieces here.
John?
Yes.
You want to go back to cart item, capital I.
Thank you. Cart item, and we're going this, or sorry, this is going to be props. We need to have props in here. Props dot cart item dot name. Props dot cart item dot price. Price, and that's all we need. Okay. Click, 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 click. 4 items in my cart. 4 items in here, $399.96. Click on my cart and it breaks because cart item dot name, lowercase c. And it reloads. Click, 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 click. There we go. Our total's incorrect. Okay, but our cart items are there. These don't work, but that's okay. We can fix that pretty quick. Okay, so our total over here, same thing. We can literally go up back to here and copy this. Exactly. Copy, paste. Instead of this dot state, it's this dot props. That's the only difference. Okay. So now 269, click on my cart, 269. Perfect. Okay. Ideally, in a real ideal world, you wouldn't want to do this multiple times. You'd probably write a function somewhere that's accessible by both. Ideally, there would be some sort of helper file in here that just contains functions that you can use. You can just pass in data and get data back. And there should be a way to do that. I just don't know of one off the top of my head. Okay, we could have calculated it up here too, if we wanted to, and then passed it down. So total price, maybe that's even stored in state. I don't know. Okay, depending on how you do it. Let's do the last piece. The last piece is going to be removing the items from cart. So remove from cart. Okay, again, that needs to be up here because this is where the state is, where the cart items are. So that's where this function needs to be. And it's going to be very similar, except instead of adding, we're going to be removing. We're going to be taking the state and we're going to be filtering it out. Dot filter. Our item, and this is going to be CI not equal to item. So we're looking for the item that matches the cart item, right? And we're keeping everything that is not that item. So keep everything, all the cart items that are not the item that we want to remove, which will end up removing the one item we do want to remove. So we have this function to update the state, remove it from cart. We don't need it up here. We need to pass it down to cart, and then cart needs to pass it down to cart item. So we're going to say remove from cart, this dot remove from cart, and we're going to take this, we're going to copy it because we're going to need it again. We're going to head down to cart, and we don't need it here. We need to pass it down one more time, down to here. And it's this dot props dot remove from cart. Then down here, down in cart item, we're putting it on that button. On click, this or props dot remove from cart item, or the, sorry, props dot cart item, and we're going to wrap that in an anonymous function. Should do it. Oh yeah, see the numbers? That's because I need to do a to fixed on that. That's on cart right here. There we go. Boop, 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 boop. Oh, and last piece, important. There's a couple pieces that I'm missing, but this one's important, so I'm going to cover it. When, so last piece was I said, when you're in here and you don't have anything in your cart, you should put your cart is empty. This is important. You will have to do this on a project. Your cart is empty. How do I do this? So in this UL, I'm going to say, so we have this piece right here, cart item. Okay, remove from cart. So if this has items in it, it will print this out automatically. Cart, if there's cart items in here, okay? See, there's no total, there's nothing. I essentially want a big thing around this chunk here. Oops, this chunk here, right here. Okay, I don't want to show this UL and I don't want to show this total if there are no items in the cart. So I can wrap all of this inside a ternary if I wanted to. So I can say this dot props dot cart items dot length greater than 0. If there are, that means there are cart items. If there are cart items, output this stuff. Super ugly. Okay, but we'll clean it up. Okay. Otherwise.
Don, question mark and colon.
Yeah.
And your sorry, your class name total has a space in between now. Line 17, class name total has a space.
Thanks. Okay. Otherwise, what do we say? Okay. It doesn't like that very much, so we'll see if that works. No, it doesn't like that very much, so we'll put that at the end.
Do you want to wrap your cart is empty in a div?
We could. I think it's because of this, but we'll see. And yeah, there needs to be a div around here or something, right? JSX is very picky about that concept of only one thing can be returned. And not only can only one thing be returned, one thing must be returned. Okay. I wonder if this could be an if statement. It doesn't, I don't think it can be in here, inside here. I think it must be a ternary. If you're going to put it inside of this render, it must be a ternary, but there are other ways to do this. For example, you can do an if statement outside of this render and return JSX. This could be in a function if you wanted to, okay? But this will be a way to conditionally show or hide some piece. So see, your card is empty, just like, so this post. That's everything. And now it shows it. I click this button, your card is empty. Okay, so you can use ternaries right in here. They look super ugly, and there's better ways to do this, but this is the easiest way. Okay. All right. So again, a lot of this is just rehashed from Friday. It gives you another chance to redo it, okay, but this time with React Router. Any questions? I went through this one pretty quick. There was a lot of stuff to go through this time, but I did want to focus on that React Router component at the beginning. The rest of it we've already done, more or less.
Sorry. I just got a quick question. So for this page, like for those props, why do you need to use this props?
Oh yeah, I don't actually. I thought this was going to be stateful, but it's not. But because I did it as a class, I have to use this props. If I change it to a function, then I pass the props in as a parameter. So it changes how I'm accessing them.
Okay, thanks.
For this page, why doesn't the bottom div for your card is empty have to be in like the closing?
In these things?
Thing? Yeah.
It could be. It could be. It's just a matter of what you do. The big question is, do you want it wrapped in a div, or do you want it just as a plate? Like this is essentially a nothing element. Like it's not a div, it's not a span, it's nothing. It just kind of, it's a trick for React. So this will be wrapped in a div versus this will not be wrapped in anything. It still works and it'll look the same. Oh no, there you go. Okay. So if we were to inspect that, it looks different. So I wrapped it in a div instead. I didn't wrap this stuff in a div because I know I didn't need to. I just wrapped it.
I thought you could only return like to one parent.
Yeah, this is one parent.
But there's like an H2 and an aside outside of the one parent, no?
Well, yeah, but within this one parent, so I'm returning this aside, right? That's the one parent.
Oh,
now
okay.
within each context, so this also inside this piece, I can only return one parent. So I couldn't return a UL and a div. I had to wrap it in a single parent.
Right. Okay.
Again, yeah. That concept that's a recurring theme in React, is having to wrap things in single parents. And you'll find out very quickly because React will yell at you. Okay, let's take a break, 10:15. Let's come back at 10:30 and we'll review the practice project that you'll be working on over the course of the next couple days. It's a doozy, okay? It will encompass everything that we've done so far, and it'll challenge you, okay? And then I will give you your final project and we'll be done, no more. Okay. So come back 10:30. See you in 17 minutes. So you're building a little project called MyReads. Okay. Now, it has a list of books, currently reading, want to read, and read. When you click on the little plus button in the bottom right-hand corner, it brings you to a new page. On this page, when you type in something, it automatically performs a search. I did not type enter. I did not press enter. I just typed. And books show up. Each of these books, these are all coming from an API that they provided, but they're not using it with fetch. They're doing it in a different way. And that different way is using a method, a function, get, update, and search. Okay. These also return promises. So you will need to add thens to these things. So search query dot then. Over here, update dot then. Okay, because these are promises, and so which means they're asynchronous. Okay, so you have to kind of treat them as though they're fetches, but they're not fetches. They're wrappers around fetch. Okay, you will be doing something very similar to this. The other big difference here is that there's 3 methods: get all the books, search for a specific book by a query, or search for books by query, and third, update the books. So unlike our previous examples, we aren't just getting things. We are now able to update things at the API, which means when we're in our books app over here and we move this somewhere to move to currently reading. Okay, so I can actually click these down arrows and change what bookshelf they're in, right? Currently, it's not in any of my bookshelves. I am not reading it. I do not want to read it. It is not read. It is nothing right now, right? So I will put it in want to read. So Linux, security alert, and control features, I'll put in want to read, click. Okay, and now I go back, and there it is. It shows up in want to read. Now, the reason why I would want to update the API is this. I can go away from this application. See, I'm gone. And I can go back. And that book is now still there. Unlike the React that we're used to, where we refresh and everything restarts, because we're putting the data back into the API is storing that data for us. So every time we load this page, it pulls the old data that we had updated with. So we can push data to store it and pull down data. So the only difference is when we do one of those clicks, when we do one of these, right? When I do one of these, I am not only changing the state of this application, I am also performing an update. I'm doing both. Okay? I'm modifying the state because React requires the state to work, but I'm also updating the data at the API. So I do 2 things. Okay, it's really not that complicated. It is literally this.setState and update all in one function. That's it. Really not hard. Okay. Now, what exactly do you need to be building? What should you be focusing on? If you go to this page, Udacity's final project rubric, it contains all the requirements. You'll have to log in with your Udacity account, but we've used Udacity in the past. It's free. right? Create the account. We've used it for, I think, the Git and the command line, some command line stuff, maybe. Okay, we used it for a couple things. Just log in and you'll be directed to this page. Okay, and this highlights all the different requirements for this to be done. Okay, I don't quite have this, but this is pretty detailed about what, when I review this, this is what I will go over on Wednesday. Okay, treat this seriously, treat this like a final project. If you do well on this, you'll probably do very well on the final project. If you do poorly on this, you can still do very well on the final project because you can do this, take this as a lesson. If you choose not to do this at all, the final project will probably eat you alive. Okay. The final project does contain all the stuff that we've done up till now, except it's kind of like everything that we've done on steroids and bigger and just badder. Okay. So, but you do this, get to the final project, it'll be piece of cake. Okay. Any questions? Okay. Good stuff. It's interesting. I think this is a really good project to do. I was thinking, I mentioned on Friday, I was going to get you to do one more thing. I was thinking it'd be a little bit smaller, but there's a couple things that I really wanted you to experience and practice a little bit more before going into the final project, really have an understanding of everything. And I think this really meets all that criteria. The final project is derivative of this, right? I looked at this and I said, oh, this has a lot of stuff that I like, but I want to do a different final project. So I'm going to make my own. And I kind of use this as a not a template, but an idea of what the final project should look like. So again, it's derivative, which means you solve a lot of the problems here. You're probably solving a lot of the problems already for the final project. Any questions? Okay, I can, oh, so yeah, go ahead.
No question, but just some feedback, because I know you like it, but
yeah.
I feel like the pacing for the React has been a lot better. Like at first, before we really started writing it, before the assignment, I was much like Bruce. If something worked, sometimes I'd still ask why, and if it didn't work, then I'd ask why. But working through it, I feel like the understanding's gone a lot better, and it's like you said too. There's a lot of patterns in things, right? Like
yeah,
we've updated state by adding and removing something. We're pretty much going to be using that, and then like seeing the map function for any time that we're trying to render an item from a list. You know, just those kind of patterns and stuff.
Yeah.
And seeing a lot of that, so it's been good. Like the progression, I think, has been moving at a good rate, and it's really just kind of come together and started making sense well.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that feedback. I do really appreciate it. It's nice to know that because I think that this is going to be the same. Given with that feedback, I think this will be the same pace that I use next year. I'm going to make some adaptations to some timings of everything and provide the school with some feedback and say, I think this is the correct pace. Having said that, do you feel like it's too slow? Do you feel like now, okay, regardless of your answer to this question, I'm still giving you this practice project.
Yep.
Do you feel like you would want to go in and write the final right now, or do you feel like no? Okay.
The pacing's fine, but in my opinion, I think there should be more time spent on React. It's just once you start learning it and you look into it more, it's so valuable and it's so sought after. And looking at like what we can do with it and knowing that like we're done after this week, it kind of leaves me wanting for more, right? And
yeah, how are you liking it in general?
I at first, like I said, I didn't enjoy it, but that's just so much that we didn't understand it. But now that we're using it, yeah, I see a lot of the advantages, like not having to mess around with like DOM elements and stuff like that is super, super helpful, right? So I see a lot of the benefits to it.
Yeah, cool. Okay, excellent. Thanks a lot for the feedback, Kevin. I appreciate it. Okay, so I'm sure there will be a lot of questions that come up as you start downloading and trying to run. And some of you might even run into errors when you npm install. Again, that is not uncommon when you're dealing with old JavaScript and old Node, NPM and packages and stuff like that. The speed of which JavaScript moves is so fast that something that's like that hasn't been touched in a year is already old, right? And like packages get updated and new ones don't work with old ones, and it's just you think laptops and technology moves fast, programming languages move even faster, especially popular ones. So if there are big questions that I think most people have to deal with, just check on Discord. Okay, I'll try to post any answers in there as I come up with them. But it should be pretty good for the most part. So enjoy. Take your time. Tomorrow we will touch base tomorrow morning. I'd like to see where everyone is at. If I can, I would like to go over the solution tomorrow afternoon. That is fastest case scenario. Slowest case scenario is Wednesday morning. So best case scenario for me, tomorrow afternoon, slow Wednesday morning. I'm fine with Wednesday morning. I'm feeling the pinch a little bit for time. And so I'm kind of trying to push, but I also want you to have the time to do it. So we're going for Wednesday, but maybe tomorrow. That's why we'll check in tomorrow morning, 8:45, to see where we're at, answer any questions, chat about stuff, talk about the weather, that kind of thing. Okay. All right. So if there is no questions or comments or concerns with this, I will post the solution for this morning's thing on a GitHub repository, and I'll post the link on the website. Other than that, I think we're good here. And we shall see you tomorrow, 8:45. Good luck. Enjoy. Yeah.
Will we get our assignment 1 marks today?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The assignment 1 marks will be coming out today.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, you too. Bye-bye.